Welcome to the channel. Today we delve into the extraordinary history of one of the most ordinary yet globally influential products in the world, the potato. This humble tuber, which today ranks as the fifth most important crop worldwide after wheat, corn, rice, and sugarcane, or the third most significant food crop after rice and wheat, gave rise to modern industrial agriculture and was a key aspect of the Columbian exchange. We will trace its journey from the high Andes to the tables of kings and see how its rapid adoption fueled the rise of the West, triggered the Industrial Revolution, and led to a devastating monoculture disaster that forever changed global migration patterns. Part 1. The potato's superpowers and origin. The potato's history began in the Andes region of South America, which spans across modern-day Peru, Bolivia, and Chile. The Andes are the planet's longest mountain range, where the climate is harsh and temperatures can swing from 75 degrees Fahrenheit to below freezing in just a few hours. Despite this unpromising terrain, the potato became one of the world's great staple crops. The native people, such as the Inca, began cultivating this plant more than 10,000 years ago near Lake Titicaca, although it took about 5,000 years for it to become an established agricultural culture. In Quechua, the native language, the tuber was known as papa. Wild potatoes are laced with solanine and tomatine, toxic compounds that are unaffected by heat. To counter this, ancient mountain peoples learned to mimic wild animals like the guanaco and vicuña by dunking the wild potatoes in a gravy made of clay and water. What makes the potato indispensable are its superpowers. Phenomenal productivity. Compared with grains, tubers are inherently more productive. Because they grow underground, they are not limited by the plant's aerial structure, which allows them to yield up to 3 times more calories per unit of land than grains. For perspective, a Lebanese farmer once dug up a potato that weighed nearly 25 pounds. Hardiness and protection. Originating from a harsh environment, potatoes were naturally resilient. Furthermore, growing underground, they were protected from animals and hungry soldiers during wartime, who were often too lazy to dig up the field. Storage and nutrition. Potatoes are rich in starch, protein, vitamins, and other beneficial substances. Andean people invented chuño, freeze-dried potatoes that could be stored for years without refrigeration, serving as insurance against bad harvests. When the Spanish conquistadors, led by Francisco Pizarro, arrived in 1532, they encountered the strange food and sometimes reluctantly ate it. They brought it back to Europe, and the name patata was likely adopted, possibly confusing it with the Caribbean sweet potato, batata, or perhaps to avoid offending the Pope, papa. Part 2. The chronology of influence. The PR problem and royal marketing 16th to 18th centuries. For decades, the potato had a massive PR problem. In the 18th century, it was a startling novelty and considered coarse food. Some feared it was an aphrodisiac or a cause of fever or leprosy. The philosopher Denis Diderot even described the root in his encyclopedia as tasteless and starchy and windy, causing gas. In England, farmers denounced the Solanum tuberosum as an advanced scout for hated Roman Catholicism. The election slogan in 1765 was, "No potatoes, no popery." To overcome this, influencers were needed. Prussia. King Frederick the Great was a potato enthusiast. To fight famine, he issued the famous Kartoffelbefehl Potato Act in 1756, ordering everyone in Prussia to plant them. Legend suggests he threatened to cut off the noses of any peasants who refused to plant the crops. Potatoes helped Prussia prove remarkably resilient during the 7 Years' War. Today, people still honor him by leaving potatoes at his grave in Potsdam, recognizing him as the Potato King, Kartoffelkönig. France. Pharmacist Antoine Augustin Parmentier was captured 5 times by the Prussian army during the 7 Years' War and survived on a potato-only diet. He became a marketing genius. He presented an all-potato dinner to high society guests, including possibly Thomas Jefferson. He supposedly persuaded King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette to wear potato blossoms in their buttonholes and hair, respectively, inspiring a brief aristocratic vogue. He successfully convinced commoners to eat the crop by planting 40 acres at the edge of Paris and having soldiers guard the fields during the day, only to disappear at sunset so locals would steal the super valuable forbidden fruit at night. Today, dishes marked parmentier in France are guaranteed to contain potatoes. Ending famine and fueling empire. The mass adoption of the potato finally allowed Europe to escape the cyclical horror of famine. France, for example, had experienced 40 nationwide famines between 1500 and 1800. Because smallholders could grow potatoes on fallow land, the result, in terms of calories, was to double Europe's food supply. Routine famine almost disappeared in the 2,000-mile potato belt that stretched across Europe. This reliable food source caused a huge population boom. In France, a simple potato diet provided all essential vitamins, increasing the average height of villagers and their life expectancy. The historian William H. McNeill argued that, by feeding rapidly growing populations, the potato permitted a handful of European nations to assert dominion over most of the world between 1750 and 1950. The unprecedented population growth, combined with the fact that fewer people were needed to work the potato land, meant that labor was freed up to migrate to cities and work in factories. The potato provided these growing urban populations with affordable, nutritious food, effectively making it the backbone of the industrial economy and triggering the Industrial Revolution. Part 4. The Monoculture Disaster and the Great Migration. The very success of the potato, which is grown from clones, little chunks of tuber rather than seeds, laid the template for modern industrial agriculture, or monoculture. The practice of planting genetically identical clones over vast areas creates vulnerability. This vulnerability led to catastrophe in Ireland. By the mid-19th century, roughly 40% of the Irish ate no solid food other than potatoes. The Irish working class was almost completely dependent on one specific variety, the Irish lumper. The disaster struck in 1845 when the fungus-like organism Phytophthora infestans, meaning vexing plant destroyer, arrived in Ireland. Scientists believe P. infestans originated in Peru. The organism caused the tubers to be shrunken and shriveled on the outside and corky and rotted inside. The blight ruined half the potato crop in the first year and subsequently destroyed 3/4 of the crop over the next 7 years. The worst year was 1847, known as the Black 47. Between 1845 and 1852, 1 million or more Irish people died, making it one of the deadliest famines in history in the percentage of population lost. In response to starvation and forced evictions by landlords, 2 million more people fled Ireland. Many traveled to North America, Canada, and Australia on old, dangerous ships called coffin ships, where mortality rates were high. Ireland's population has the melancholy distinction of being the only country in Europe to have fewer people within the same boundaries than it did more than 150 years ago. This resulting migration forever changed the United States. Today, more than 35 million people in the U.S. claim Irish descent. This disaster also set the template for the agro-industrial complex. To combat soil depletion from monoculture, farmers turned to Peruvian guano, dried seabird droppings, which was the world's first intensive fertilizer. Later, when the Colorado potato beetle, which originated in Mexico despite its name, began devastating crops, panicked farmers used Paris green, a form of arsenic. This launched a competition to produce ever more potent arsenic blends, creating the modern pesticide industry. Part 4. The modern potato, strategic resource, and processed food. Today, the potato remains a global powerhouse. The market is projected to grow from $115.74 billion in 2024 to $137.46 billion by 2029. Global production, the Asia-Pacific region is the largest market, with China leading global production. China relies on the potato as a tool for food security. India is the second largest producer. Europe remains an important market with high consumption levels in countries like Ukraine and Belarus. Processing trend. A significant modern trend is the global shift towards processed potato products. Less than 50% of the world's potatoes are consumed fresh. The majority is processed into products like frozen French fries, potato chips, and starch. In the United States, 10 million tons were dedicated to processing in 2020. Of that, 8.6 million tons were used for frozen products alone, such as French fries. The annual sales of potato-based snacks in the U.S. currently exceed $4.8 billion. While the sources confirm that the potato itself is rich in protein, starch, and vitamins, they do not contain specific data or analysis on how the high consumption of fats and oils in these processed products, such as chips and French fries, affects the health of modern nations. Conclusion. From the papa in the Andes to the food of the revolution in France, and from the second bread in Russia to the backbone of modern industrial food production, the potato's influence is undeniable. It's an emblem of the Columbian exchange and a living example of how the mixing of ecosystems shaped the history we learn in school. It helped billions escape poverty and transform the world, even as its subsequent monoculture cultivation led to global tragedy and mass migration.